Zero carbon.
E-stop.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Zero Carbonista Series 5. This episode has been called Just Stop the Tories, Dale Vince.
The series.
Which you came up with about a year ago in a moment of sheer infuriation and anger and said, we must call the next series Just Stop the Tories. And it's sort of, I think we can say, kind of worked, yeah?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, we stopped the Tories, right? That happened 3 weeks ago. The name itself, Just Stop the Tories, I mean, it came from last summer, this period of great frustration, as you say. I was supporting Just Stop Oil. I'd funded them from the get-go, took part in a march around London, that kind of stuff. Took a lot of flack from the right-wing media for that and stuff like that. But Rishi Sunak was only not listening to Just Stop Oil. He was doubling down on issuing licenses for oil and gas. And it was clear to me that we couldn't stop oil by any more disruptive protests. We had to do it at the ballot box. We had to stop the Tories. So that's the roots of it.
Yeah.
It became the title of our series, which comes to an end today, I think, actually.
Yeah.
And we are looking for a title for the new series in this kind of post-Tory, post-oil world that we're finding ourselves in right now. So any ideas, lob them to us by email or when the mic comes round for the Q&A in a little while.
We were thinking of doing like a kind of Blue Peter type competition where...
you make a name out of old cardboard and bits of scrap.
Yeah, exactly. All the rest of it. I bumped into my local MP, who is a Tory, and she was in the cabinet. I won't say who she is, Laura Trott. And she said to me, I love the podcast. And I said, but it's called Just Stop the Tories. She said, I know, it's brilliant. So even
I love that.
We got to a stage in this government when either... And you said this actually on the last episode, Dale, that even the Tories didn't believe in what they were doing. And we've said all along that whatever anybody thinks of Rishi Sunak, I've never believed that he believes half the stuff that he was advocating, which was clearly to try and kind of address that Reform UK contingent in his own party.
Yeah, and hold the party together, wasn't it? I think that was clear. Funny thing, you remind me of, I jumped off a train before the election, bumped into our MP, ex-MP. She was a Tory, is a Tory, actually was our MP. And she said to me, there's this problem in Stroud. Can you do something about it? I'm like, hang on a minute.
Really?
You're the MP.
Should we just do an hour of I bumped into a Tory anecdotes? I didn't know you had one as well, Dale.
Yeah. We don't have one now. Stroud doesn't have a Tory MP.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, I live in a place called Sevenoaks where you could literally put a blue rosette on a chimpanzee and it would get elected. So there was never in any doubt. But anyway, we watch with interest. So let's just talk about July the 4th then, Dale, because it exceeded... we predicted a lot what might happen, as everybody did, and it was clearly looking, for the last few months at least, that at the very least, that there was going to be a bit of a wipeout. But I mean, this was monumental, and it's monumental not just because the Tories were completely inept, and even they will admit they'd lost. If they had a focus, they'd lost it. They'd lost direction. Nobody really knew what they stood for. They were split into about 72 different parties, it seems. But what happened actually was bigger than just Labour majority. It's symbolic of change, isn't it? This is not just about a party won loads more seats. This is a party that's going to do something rather different in the next few years.
Yeah, and I remember saying before the election that I thought this was the most important election of our lifetimes, right? For anybody alive today, I felt that was true because we were halfway through, we still are, obviously, that last vital decade the UN said we had, within which we had to act to keep temperatures as close to 1.5 degree global rise as we could. At the same time, we'd spaffed the first half of that up the wall with Johnson, Truss and Sunak. And we'd actually gone backwards with, rowing back on the ban on petrol and diesel cars and that kind of stuff as Sunak adopted an anti-green stance. And at the same time, we've seen the rise of green energy and green issues generally to become economic issues instead of environment issues. And what I've taken to saying most recently is that 100% green energy on the grid and a whole bunch of other policies that are being pursued now, it's not about ice caps and polar bears. It's about jobs and GDP. Because actually the sensible thing for us to do is to pursue green policies because they're also the most economic. Fossil fuels have had their day. We published a study that showed for every pound we invest in fossil fuels, we'll get twice the number of jobs and twice the GDP growth if we invest the same pound in renewable energy. And it's changed the landscape completely. As Bill Clinton might have said, it's the green economy stupid. It's just a massive opportunity for us. Labour grasped that, and I think enough of the public could see that as well. And at the same time, the Tories had 14 years of f***ing about, really, and fighting each other for the leadership and not really doing anything. And the big thing for me, after election, it's been 3 weeks and we're getting non-stop announcements from Labour, policy announcements, and they're doing things. And I don't remember that amount of things happening in the last 5 years.
So quickly as well. Yeah. I mean, the speed with which it's happened.
Been brilliant. And it's like the grown-ups are in charge again.
Yeah.
It really feels that way.
It's interesting that we've talked about this on previous podcasts, that in America, there's always been a contingent of Republicans, oddly, that got the economic argument of this. So whether people believed in the environmental stuff or how passionate they were about it was almost another debate. I think they were called Republicans for the Environment or something like that. They absolutely knew that the future, there is no future unless you embrace exactly what we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's right. I think the Republicans, there are states like Texas, for example, that are benefiting massively from not George Bush. No, not him. Biden, Joe Biden. Joe Biden's IRA Act, which I think is the oddest name he could have ever come up with.
It's a bit clunky, isn't it?
But he's part Irish as well, and he's got Irish heritage. Yeah. Doesn't he not know?
Did they not have a team meeting around that title at some point? Is this the best we've got?
But Texas is feeling massive benefits from a solar boom and stuff like that. And the Republicans in that state that run that state, they're owning that. They're claiming the credit for that rather than Biden's IRA Act. And that's quite funny. But that's where we are today. The green policies are actually economic policies. And it's a wonderful place to be because we no longer have to argue that it's an altruistic thing that we need to do for the good of future generations and wildlife and all that kind of stuff, because it's for the good of people right now. And most of the people in our country are worried about paying their bills and how they live day to day. And therefore it chimes with them. And therefore we can get the kind of government that we need to do all the big picture good stuff at the same time.
I mean, it's vaguely conspiratorial argument, but, Keir Starmer has made all the right noises. Ed Miliband appears to be putting all the right things into place. As you say, lots of announcements. There is a theory that there's a reality of government that when you get in there, all the things you want to do, you can't do. You can't do all of them. You're at the behest still of big corporate. Do you remember the comedian Bill Hicks? Bill Hicks was a sort of very anti-establishment comedian. He said that when you become the president of the United States, you get taken into a room. And when you walk in the room, there's the head of steel, the head of oil, the head of tech. All the big CEOs are standing there. The room goes dark. A big screen comes down. And then they show you a video of the Kennedy assassination from an angle that's never been seen before. And then the screen goes back up and they say, "Thank you, Mr. President," and he walks out again. And the point being, the theory is that no matter how well-intended governments are, they will always be at the behest of other circumstances around them. Do you sense that this is a government that will ignore, if you like, big corporation, pharmaceuticals, oil, whatever it happens to be, and they'll just get on with it?
I think we're already seeing from this government a determination to face down whatever lobby groups that may pop up, and including, and perhaps surprisingly, NIMBYs out in the countryside. I mean, Keir Starmer has made clear he's willing to face down NIMBYs that are trying to prevent pylons and wind farms from being built and stuff like that. Never heard that language from a government before, actually.
Yeah.
So I don't think that big business interests will have their way. I think also this government are blessed with opportunities. Everywhere they look, something's f***ed up and just needs a simple change, a simple common sense change that they're able to make, And I think it's like a snowball for me. We're 3 weeks in. They banned that bee pesticide that, kills so many bees. 1 teaspoon, 1.25 billion bees die from that, for example. Unbanned onshore wind eased the way for solar power. I mean, just a whole host of things. I even lost track of them. Been so many good things. But I think we're just at the beginning of it as well, because there are consultations underway for further, deeper policy changes, because we'll have to go further. To get to 100% green energy by 2030, we've got to do more than just unban wind, onshore wind, and ease the way for solar. We've got to transform the grid. I'm super excited. Every day is like it's another Christmas or something like that. What's the policy? And I hate Christmas, right? We all know that, but not this version of Christmas. I love that. What's going to happen tomorrow? Well, all right, it's Sunday, so probably nothing. But Monday, we'll hear some more interesting things. I know that we will. So
you've spent a career, Dale, kind of deliberately making an enemy of the Conservative Party. Mostly, I mean, there's one or two Tories that you've pressed the flesh with and got on okay with. But now it seems that the new kid on the block in your sights, or you're in their sights, I think, is oddly the Green Party. What's all that about, Dale Vince?
Well, let me just say first off, I never set out to make myself an enemy of the Tory party. But when David Cameron jumped in with both feet and ended onshore wind and killed the solar industry at the same time about 10 years ago, I thought, well, this, right? We just can't allow that. I mean, we were apolitical pretty much at the time, but politics just got involved in renewable energy and the environment. And I realized that the politics is where the power is. If they could do that to something as good for us and as obvious as renewable energy, then, they could do anything. And I think over the following years, it just became more and more kind of dug in between me and the Tories, I just want to say. They went one way and I was very much the other way. And the thing about the Green Party is, during the election, I did campaign for Labour in a couple of seats the Greens were hoping to win. They did win them, in fact, in Brighton and in Bristol. And I did it on the basis that we couldn't be sure of the outcome of the election. The Tories had introduced voter ID laws that were going to disenfranchise up to 1.5 million people. Turned out it was about 500,000, so that wasn't so bad. But it was 500,000 people that probably wouldn't vote Tory. They doubled election spending limits just ahead of the election to try and buy it, up to about 30 million from 17 or something like that. They had boundary changes as well that worked in their favour. And at the same time, they were busy talking up a massive Labour majority, which would have had the twin effect of causing would-be Labour voters to say, well, we don't need to turn out because it's a done deal. And for Tory voters who were going to stay at home pissed off with the Tory party to say, well, we better turn out to try and minimise the majority. All of that put it into doubt from my perspective. Meanwhile, the Greens are saying, well, look, Labour are going to get a super majority. We can have 4 MPs. That would be okay. We can do something good with that. And I was just out on the street saying, look, we can't be certain. This election is too important to take that kind of risk with. So we fell out a little bit. I mean, they're still my friends as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what they think, but I've got a lot of friends in the Green Party and that kind of stuff. Post the election, the narrative from the Green Party now is that the 4 Green MPs, and I'm really glad they got 4 MPs, but they're saying we can hold Labour to account. I just find that hard to understand. There are 120 Tory MPs, right? Surely they can do more account holding than 4 Green MPs. There are 70 Lib Dem MPs. Surely they can do more, that kind of stuff. And I heard Carla Denyer speak. We were on the same TV programme yesterday, and she said, it doesn't matter. Getting to 100% green electricity on the grid doesn't matter if we don't stop producing oil in the North Sea. And I thought, well, that's a crazy thing to say. That's the transition right there in front of you. We increase the amount of green energy on the grid and it pushes fossil fuels off and we end it that way. And then she said, Labour were issuing new license for oil and gas. Well, they're not. So I was a bit confused by that. I think it's a strange thing for me. They say that Labour is not a green government. I disagree with them completely. I think we have a green government now. I think we have the greenest government we've ever had. And when I look at the manifestos for Labour and the Green Party, I don't see a lot of difference. Big difference is Labour can make it happen. And so for me, it just looks like a lot of sniping from the sidelines, a lot of politicking, when they actually should be getting behind Labour and arguing for the things that are happening, like I am, as good things do, rather than kind of jockeying for position themselves, which I find a bit I have to say unfortunate, because I think we're in a place where we're blessed to have this government that has the vision and the will to make the changes that we need so badly.
It's understandable, though, isn't it? If you are the Green Party, you've spent, and members of the Green Party, I'm sure there are some in this audience who've been saying what Labour are now saying. They've been saying for donkey's years and talking about accelerating things and not messing around and just doing it and not listening to futile arguments that actually don't stand up to any level of scrutiny. And then suddenly the new kids on the block arrive, Keir Starmer, the Labour Party, they start doing all the work that they've been working tirelessly for years. So you can understand they'd be a bit annoyed about that.
Well, I can and I can't, because I've also been lobbying for these things for decades as well. I was talking about energy independence 20 years ago, and now it's being passed into law. I think that's fantastic. I don't resent that. I don't want to claim that as my territory and resent Labour for becoming green. I want Labour to become more green. So I kind of do understand it, but I don't understand it. And I had a conversation with somebody from our local Green Party before the last election. Like I say, we're friends. And she said to me, but Labour have taken our policies. I said, you should be happy.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Because that's the way you get your policies enacted.
Yeah, fair point. One of the questions that does come up a fair bit on the podcast is, will you still hold Labour's feet to the fire? And, it's that they're in government now. There was that little wobble about green spending before the election, that it was slightly reduced. It wasn't to the point where they were obliterating or diluting policy as such. But there is a sense that you still have to keep on top of what is going on. Will you still hold them to account?
I find it strange and unpleasant metaphor, holding somebody's feet to the fire. I know it's a common one, but I just don't like it. You know,
I mean, you haven't literally got to do it, Dale. By the way.
That's my problem. I
Like
take everything literally. That's a bit of an issue.
Bring in the next Labour MP, please. Mr. Vince would like to see you.
I'd like to roast your feet. Look, I'm more of a glass half full person. I look at what's happening and I just think it's brilliant. And it's a hypothetical situation, right? If Labour aren't doing the right thing, will I argue for the right thing? Of course I will. You know, I was at Southwark Crown Court last week making the case for the Just Stop All protesters that received those horrific sentences. And I know that might not have been appreciated by some people in the Labour Party because, you know, it puts them on the spot. I said I thought Labour should intervene. The Tory law that caused those sentences should be repealed. Somebody should look at those sentences and maybe even have some kind of amnesty because we're past the period of Just Stop Oil. We've stopped it by stopping the Tories. And, you know, I said those things because I believe those things and I can't help but say the things I believe in. So I guess my answer is yes, but not literally.
Where are you on direct action then now? Because I know you previously kind of disassociated yourself with some of the methods, whether it's breaking windows of banks or spraying what isn't actually paint but a liquid onto the sides of buildings and corporations and the like. You've not always thought that was the best way forward. But what is, you know, some people still say, look, and it's fine, we live in a democracy, we're not North Korea. If people think things should go faster, then that's okay. What is the level then? Where can or should people be allowed to protest?
If you look at the sentences handed down last week, it's like we do live in Russia or North Korea. And I think if activist demonstrators in one of those countries had received those sentences last week, our government, Western governments, would have been very quick to rightly criticize them for that. I mean, Thank you. They took part in a Zoom call to talk about disrupting traffic, part of this protest, or to raise awareness about obviously the climate crisis and the stupidity of drilling for more oil and gas. You know, there was a far bigger problem in the background, which I think justified quite a bit of disruption. Anyway, they got those incredible sentences. It's become a very difficult country, the one we live in which we can pursue peaceful protest. And I think that's a problem. You mentioned I'd kind of walked away from protests and that kind of stuff. What happened was last summer, I said big disruption of the kind that we'd already seen was just feeding the Tory culture war narrative against eco-yobs. I think I was called by The Sun an eco... what did Sunak call me? Thank you, Will. Eco-zealot. Yep. Sunak was in Washington, and he gave a speech, and he referred to me as an eco-zealot. And I'm thinking, God, haven't you got better things to do? Like, you're supposed to be running the country. Why are you saying these things?
It's a very kind of Tory insult, isn't it, you little zealot? I mean, it's not...
my response was to call
him...
You
hoodlum, Dale.
My response was to call him a fossil fool.
Yeah, that works.
That works. So... I think there is a place for protest, absolutely. I think the huge disruption that we saw from Just Stop Oil, I think it was justified back in the day. I don't think it's justified now. That's where I'm at. But I think peaceful protest is a right that we should have. It's a democratic right. There you have it.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the next few years, you said right at the beginning, the first few weeks have been very quick. A lot of policies being announced. Of course, what's got to follow from that is real action. People want to see what's going on in the sea. They want to see turbines going up. They want to see this stuff happening at a pace. But of course, by definition, this is arguably the biggest engineering project sort of since the Industrial Revolution. I think Keir Starmer used those words just this week. So that takes time. That doesn't happen in a couple of weeks or months.
Yeah, that's right. And I think one of the dangers is that it doesn't happen enough in the first term of this government. I think we need 2 or 3 terms to really land this green economy, this picture of a green Britain. Labour have moved early with the onshore wind unban and easing the way for solar and stuff like that. And that's the key, actually, because the announcement of this week of Crown Estates and Great British Energy teaming up for offshore, that's good. But that won't result in anything being built in this term of a government in the next 5 years. Whereas onshore wind, we could build that pretty much from a standing start. We could build an onshore wind project in 12 months or a solar project. So we should see a whole bunch of those coming through before the next election. We should see energy bills coming down. There's a couple of market reforms as well that we've been recommending Labour look at that could knock 10 billion off of our energy bills. Just silly, crazy free market mechanisms that in volatile times make a lot of money for a few people people, but cost a lot of people a lot of money on their energy bills. That's an overnight win of about 10 billion, and I hope that they might pick that up. There's also the potential, we published a study for it where we talked about the rooftop revolution, which is language that Ed Miliband picked up. He did ask if that was okay. I did say it was because I'm happy for it. We did a study into the houses of Britain and their potential to take solar energy. And we found that there are enough suitable rooftops to make about 12.5% of all of the electricity that our country uses, not just for homes, but for business as well. And because we're roughly at 50% and need to build another 50%, it means our rooftops could provide 25% of what we need to build to get to energy independence. And importantly, it can do so without waiting for grid upgrades, which is the real Achilles heel of the offshore wind industry, because we don't have to upgrade the grid to put solar panels on homes. Also, we get to involve millions of people in this green economy, this energy revolution. They'll feel the benefit of that, feel a part of that. We'll build a great big distributed generator, nationwide distributed generator, which will be very resilient. At the same time, we could do energy efficiency in all of those homes, which makes the most sense, and add a battery to all of those homes. So we have a great big distributed balancing system for the grid, which will help us get to 100% green energy on the grid and stay there without the lights going out.
What is it about, I mean, in terms of turbines, windmills, whatever title somebody wishes to give them, whatever name somebody wishes to give them, what is it that, just about that kind of totemic symbol, that makes some people absolutely lose their minds and discombobulate? I mean, I don't think I'm alone in this. I actually think a field of turbines is aesthetically actually rather pleasing. I don't think there's anything offensive visually about it. That seems to be. I had a fella call into our radio show about this. I mean, I thought his spleen was going to explode. He was so angry about the idea of this, and he'd calculated that in order to make it work, and I don't know where he got the numbers from, we'd need 103 million of these things, which is, by the way, he made it up, but he reckoned he'd got the maths to back it up. But there's something about that ups, and I always say, well, look, if you can get what essentially is natural energy, and it's literally coming from the environment, and it's therefore cost effective, it's environmentally not just more considerate, but game-changing. Why does that one area of this whole debate absolutely make people lose their minds?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I've been in wind energy for about 30 years since it began in this country. And from the get-go, I've always thought that wind energy was too good to be true. Because you describe it to people how it works, where the energy comes from. There's a lack of everything. And the one thing that was latched onto back in the day was the fact that you could see them. That's it. Is that all you've got? The only downside of this technology is you can see it. Look at the downsides of fossil fuels on nuclear power and that kind of stuff. But you're right, the benefits are massive. The other thing I want to say about that is that the jobs and the GDP growth that we can get from green energy compared to fossil fuels, they're forever. Because the energy itself is forever. So these are permanent jobs. These are permanent boost to our economy. Whereas with fossil fuels, I mean, almost this is an old argument that doesn't matter anymore. But this year, we'll spend £100 billion bringing fossil fuels to our country just to burn them. And that money leaves our economy. It doesn't create any jobs here. It's money that we'll earn here some other how and then ship abroad to bring the stuff here. It's a single-use fuel. We burn it and it's gone. All of that stuff is crazy. So, I don't understand why people don't see the enormous benefit of renewable energy. But I think, thank you. I think it's a little bit like the European Union. I think it's been tarnished by years and years of right-wing media bashing, and people just make assumptions about it. Like, back in the day, people used to say windmills use more energy than they make. And I'd be like, well, who could think that? Who could think that's a thing? But people still say it now. And I think partly it's too good to be true. And partly I think, we've talked about this before, I think there's a left-wing, right-wing kind of split psychologically. People on the right wing of life, they like great big projects that cost tens of billions of pounds to build. We talked about it before.
They like the word fracking. Because of the onomatopoeic nature of the fracking. It sounds hard, doesn't it, fracking? But windmill sounds too nice, almost.
Powered by the wind and the sun.
A bit hippie-like, isn't it? Who wants a windmill when you can frack? That's the
same with meat and plants, right?
Yes.
Who wants to eat carrots when you can eat a cow?
Steak.
Come on.
I had a steak. It was this big, this steak.
So I think it's a little bit psychological. I think it's a neurological kind of tendency to be this way or that way inclined. But I think we're in the ascendancy, those of us that are this way inclined, plant-based, renewable energy, actually caring about other people and what goes on in the planet, caring about future generations and not being focused on on simply ourselves and making money today. And I think that's where everything's gone wrong for the Tory party and for the culture of free markets and privatization and stuff like that. It's all about the pursuit of money. And in the doing of that, they've disregarded everything else to great harm for all of us and ultimately for themselves.
Yeah. We are going to take some questions from the audience as well in just a few moments. Just a word on how this place is being powered this weekend. I think that's worth talking about because game-changing things are happening in the world of technology. Again, great example of how the sort of economic side of things, we have a whole new industry now of people building stuff to power festivals, to power gigs. Coldplay, I think, were quite revolutionary in doing that. Not perfect, but they're in the right place. I know you love Coldplay, Dale. You were actually in Glastonbury, weren't you, the other day? And I said to you, what were Coldplay like? You said, I didn't know they were on. It's like, they were literally headlining, Dale.
Yeah, my Glastonbury was like that.
Yeah.
We called for the end of fossil fuels a long time ago, along with other people, of course, the whole leave it in the ground movement and all that kind of stuff. What we've done recently is to bring some technology from our world as a power company. We're building grid-scale battery projects to balance the grid, and we're building them at the same site as windmills and solar panels to share a grid connection and also to create a kind of hybrid outcome, because the wind and the sun are complementary. Seasonally, you get twice as much sun in the summer as the winter, and you get twice as much wind in the winter as in the summer. So they kind of complement each other. We can share a grid connection, which makes the most of a pretty short resource, our grid. And then the battery in the middle can balance between the two. So that's a great thing. So we brought some of those batteries or that kind of technology here to WOMAD today. They're powering the second stage. The name of it escapes me, but it's Charlie Gillett. That's a funny name, but anyway, Charlie Gillett stage.
Not for Charlie Gillett, it's not.
No, probably not.
It's literally his name, Dale. It's in memory of Charlie Gillett, I think.
All right, fair enough. I'm not religious, but let's not get into that. We've got a madly big battery powering the second stage, and the thing that's behind all of this is a furtherance of ending fossil fuels out in the world on the grid and that kind of stuff, and it's to try to end the use of diesel in festivals and events. Some mad amount. Is it like 38 or 300 million liters of diesel or something like that? I'm looking at you, but no, not telling me. Gets burnt every year in outdoor events like this, and events like WOMAD. WOMAD's been on for decades. Glastonbury's been on for decades, and all up and down the country, there are events and festivals that are always on, and they always bring generators and burn diesel rather than bringing in the grid, for example, or bringing in some batteries. So I started a company recently with Claire, who sat there in the red hat in the audience, called Grid Fairies. Claire's from a live event festival kind of sector background, and obviously I am who I am. We got together to try and drive diesel out of events with a mixture of things. Batteries is just one thing. The other thing we're looking at is bringing in grid connections so that there's a permanent supply of power to all of these temporarily permanent events that keep happening. And thank you. And where that doesn't work completely because the grid is too expensive, then our other plan is to build a solar project or a wind project now that Labour are in power next to the event to pay for the grid to come in and then throw a cable over the fence when the gig is on. It's a kind of joined up approach. It doesn't sound that joined up when I describe it like that, but it's about getting festivals and events, I'm just going to say, off of diesel, because there's just millions and millions of liters of the stuff being burnt in beautiful places like this, and you've not just got the big picture pollution, you've got the local pollution and the noise, and it's not necessary. So Grid Fairies, we're here, Charlie Gillett stage. It's not a funny name at all. I take that back. And go and have a look. They're there. They're visible. You can see them. We put them on show so that people can see them. And I'm going to stop now.
And that is the end of part one of this WOMAD special. In the second part, released next week, it's the Q&A, questions from the audience at WOMAD. Join us then.
Zero carbon.
East off.